Hello, and welcome to Camera Review. Today, I wanted to answer some of the questions I keep getting asked about the GH5 performance. I see a lot of people are being annoyed with the fact that there is a loss of autofocus tracking and that the face detection has not been working properly, and issues like stabilization. Now, we will discuss each of these in separate segments, but what is important to realize is that all cameras, regardless of their make or brand, have issues, and the issues are resolved over a period of time. That's why we have progress in camera technology. Now, as far as certain elements that the camera does is incredibly good, but these issues are sometimes resolvable by having firm updates, and some are issues that are inherent with the camera that will be resolved in the next generation of cameras. So let's start with the first question. The first question I get asked is the loss of autofocus. Well, you have to realize that autofocus is a very new technology in terms of video. Video means that it is not constant, but it's constant in terms of following someone from one spot to another. So the focus is on continuously changing, and that takes a technology that will allow the person to be able to track what he wants or she wants in the shot. So if, for example, you're facing someone and you're filming them, the shift may go beyond that and may get the infinity, because the camera is a dumb instrument. It doesn't know exactly what you're aiming for. Now, in the case of someone's face, it is got face detection. It allows you to track the person through a space. But if it is an object and you don't separate it from the rest of it, then it is a problem. Now, one of the biggest problems comes in because it is the type of system that GH5 uses, which is contrast based. And that means that if you are, for example, trying to take capture a video of a flower with other flowers in the background, the camera does not recognize that is what you're attempting to do. In fact, it doesn't know that you are trying to focus something that's closer to the camera, or if you're attempting to focus beyond the camera. The camera is not intelligent enough to know that the closer an object is to the lens is oftentimes what you want to capture as your main subject, or the one that you want to have it in focus. So this is the issue that people have been having. They are, for example, filming someone, and then the autofocus shifts beyond, and that is a big problem. Now, the closest solution that you will have is to use a wider lens. For example, the focal length, if you are using a 50 millimeter, goes down to a 35 or a 24 or a 28. And what will happen is, because of the depth of field changes, you will not be having the person go out of focus as fast, or you will keep the person in focus for a longer period of time. And that means you will have less disruptions between your videoing and with your filming. Now, another important consideration is to use your aperture, for example, at f5.6 or f8 if the lighting conditions are good, because that means that you are going to have a deeper depth of field, and that is going to allow your subject to be in focus. Now, if you want to blur out the background, that is going to be an issue at times, but it's not going to cause your images to be that much worse than having it out of focus. If you have someone out of focus, it is something that's very unprofessional. It doesn't look good. So it is for that very reason, if you are stuck and you have no other option, just put your aperture at 5.6 or f8 and film with that, and use a lens that is 35 millimeters or wider. Now, the autofocus will work better if your lens is a wider lens, because the camera recognizes the type of lens you're using and it has an easier time autofocusing. Now also, please do realize that face detection is a technology that has been around for a while, but still it's in infancy. For example, you might see the person looking at the camera, and if they tilt their head, what happens is that the camera is no longer able to recognize the face tilted. Or if they change the position of their head and look away and then they come back, the camera does not realize that the person is looking sideways. So it is at those times it will lose auto detection of the face. And given that, you may want to direct the person you're filming to say, look, the camera recognizes your face if you're looking at it. But if you are not looking at it, the camera will lose it. So I will like you to look at the camera at certain angles or keep your face in the direction of the camera as much as possible. Now, it may not be possible at all times, but realize that you have to work around these things. Sometimes you might have to go to manual focus, and that is another way of using it. Now, in one of my reviews, I talked about the Tokina 11 to 16mm T3, which is a totally manual cinema lens, and that is only available if you are using manual focus, and you will have a focus follow mechanisms to be able to control the focus manually, which is the best way to use any camera. But if you are a vlogger and if you want to just make videos without having to think about it, then you will have to realize the limitations of the camera and work along with that. Now, another option that you may have is to use the camera and probably the best lighting situations. With the lighting situations, it does affect the way the camera performs. For example, in a bright daylight, and if you're doing, for example, a forest scene, it's not going to be able to recognize between the trees that you're trying to get in focus and the ones that you're not. And that is an issue that happens over and over again. Or it's similar if you are trying to focus on an apple and they got other fruits around it. It will probably shift if you're not in that working environment. So if you have the proper lighting, it will see the object more clearly. So lighting does make an important difference. Now, one of the things that you can do is if you are focusing on something that is a small object, the camera will not shift as much out of focus because it will lock on to that subject, especially if you have pre-focused it. So one of the best ways to do this is pre-focus manually and then turn on autofocus, and the rest the camera will follow. I've seen people trying to focus onto something and they wait and they wait and they wait and the camera doesn't react to it, and they say, oh, the autofocus doesn't work. Well, the autofocus doesn't work because it hasn't computed the fact that you are trying to focus on that subject. And it is for that reason, always do your manual focusing and then let the autofocus take over after you have done your preliminary focusing. And another important issue that you should consider is that using a tripod that is designed to hold that focus, because when you do a handheld, you're also pushing the camera's capabilities in terms of focusing, because you are also changing and the subject is constantly moving, so you have two different things moving at the same time. So if your camera is stationary and you're focusing on someone, it will have an easier time finding focus. And that's one important consideration to have. Now, you will see that in the near future, probably GH5 will have a firmware update to resolve this. But if you look in the manual, it says, in parentheses, I think, that the camera may lose autofocus when it's doing 4K video. And that's to be expected because they haven't quite yet mastered the technology, or they need time to develop that technology to the point where it functions properly. One of the other questions I keep getting asked is about the stabilization. Now, I know GH5 has 5-axis stabilization in camera. You have the lens stabilization. Combined, they work wonderful. But you will see that if you hold the camera and you're walking down the street, it will have this kind of a sway left to right, left to right. And I have gotten asked this question. I said that they told me this is a problem I keep having. And I said, are you using a gimbal? Well, I thought I didn't need a gimbal. But I said, look, invest in a gimbal like this one here. This is a very simple gimbal, and then you just put it on. And this way you get as much stabilization as you could possibly have with a camera. And that in itself is an additional investment, but it's a worthwhile investment because it is better than trying to hold something in your hand. Because your hands have a lot of muscles, they create vibration, they create shake, but more importantly, your camera's design is in such a way that it's up and down, not sideways most of the times, as far as correcting the stabilization. So when you are walking, the camera is trying to stabilize your up and down, but is not sufficiently stabilizing your left and right movement. When you're walking, your camera is trying to do two stabilizations at the same time, up and down and left to right. So it will first give its priority to doing the up and down, and doing left and right is going to cause problem. So you should consider using a gimbal because it allows you to have more flexibility in terms of filming. Now, if you insist on using it, know that if you stand still and you're doing pans, the camera is already compensating for your handshakes. There are a lot of muscles in your arms, in your hands that cause that shake. And before, you remember, the cameras didn't have any of these things. It didn't have in-body stabilization. It didn't have as good optical stabilization in the lenses. And those times, those cameras always needed to be used with a gimbal. Now, we are moving into a technology where these are becoming less and less necessary, but still, the technology is not there to compensate for both axis changes. So if you're doing Y and X axis, you have to understand those will be corrected, but other axes will also need time for correction. So if you're doing one type of movement, keep it in that axis. So if you're doing a pan, it will correct your motion. If you're doing up and down, it will correct your motion. But if you are moving up and down and sideways at the same time, camera cannot compensate for all of it because the computational power is not there yet. So it will take a period of time before all these technologies come together, probably in the next generation of cameras, where you can do handheld video without having any shake. And that's something that you have to compensate. And it's not the blame of GH5 or Panasonic. It's not the blame of other camera manufacturers. It is just that there are physical limitations and technological limitations to what a camera can do in this current time. So I hope I have answered some of your questions with regards to GH5, and I hope that this helps you to make better videos, help you to take better photographs, and more importantly, it helps you to enjoy, hopefully, your camera more. And I thank you for watching. Please do visit our website. Also, if you have time, please do like our video and subscribe to our channel. We're going to be bringing you many more updates, many more reviews, and I think you will enjoy watching them. And I thank you for watching our video.